Today, we're diving into the Ankita Bhandari murder case. This is a story that absolutely gripped India, sparking nationwide outrage and forcing a really tough conversation about justice. We're going to look at how one young woman's tragic death became a flashpoint for so much more. Let's get right into it.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start at the end with the court's final decision, and then we'll rewind to the very beginning to understand who Ankita was. From there, we'll trace the investigation, look at the huge political firestorm it created, and wrap up with the tough questions this case still leaves us with.
You know, at the very heart of this story, it all comes down to three men. Their actions at a resort in Uttarakhand set off a tragedy that would end up shaking the entire country.
And the end result of all of this? A sentence of life imprisonment. So the big question is, how did we get here? How did the court land on this verdict? Let's take a closer look.
It all came to a head on May 30th, 2025. That's the day a court in Kadwar handed down its final judgment, finally bringing the long and frankly painful legal chapter of this case to a close.
So the court found all three of the accused, Pulkit Arya, Sora Bhaskar, and Ankit Gupta, guilty of murder, and the sentence for all three was life in prison. Now, this was a huge moment, a major conviction. But to really get why this verdict was so closely watched, we have to go back and understand the events that led up to it.
Okay, so let's talk about the person at the center of this story, Ankita Bhandari. She was just 19 years old, a receptionist whose life was cut tragically short.
And this right here, this really shows you the power imbalance that was at play. On one side, you have Ankita, just a teenager starting a new job, and on the other, the resort owner, who also just happens to be the son of a local politician, along with two of his employees.
In the days right before she went missing, you could just feel the fear in Ankita's messages. Her phone chats, which became absolutely critical evidence, painted this horrifying picture. She felt she was being pressured by her bosses to provide, special services to the resort guests.
And this timeline is just staggering. It shows you how fast everything went wrong. She starts this new job in early September 2022. By September 18th, she's missing. And just 6 days later, her body was found in the Chilakanal Canal.
Now, finding Ankita's body wasn't the end of the story. No, it was actually the beginning of a long, difficult journey to get a conviction, a journey that was really fueled by public anger.
So how did they get there? Well, it really happened in 4 key stages. First, there was this massive public outcry because a lot of people felt the local police were bungling the investigation. That pressure led to the creation of a Special Investigation Team, or SIT. They moved fast, arresting the 3 suspects and charging them with murder, and that's what eventually led to the conviction in court.
But here's the thing. This case was never just about the crime itself. It very quickly spiraled into a political firestorm, and it tapped into this really deep well of public frustration.
The streets in Uttarakhand were just flooded with protesters, and their big demand was for a CBI investigation. That's India's top federal investigative agency. Why? Well, that demand shows a deep, deep distrust in the local police. So many people feared that influential figures, these so-called VIPs at the center of the whole thing, were being protected.
And this really gets to the heart of it. You basically had 2 completely different stories playing out at the same time. On one side, you had protesters alleging a cover-up, demanding a higher-level investigation. And on the other side, you had the government saying, no, justice is being served by our state team, and there's no evidence of any VIP involvement.
And this fight over the truth, it actually got so intense it spilled into other courtrooms. A senior political leader, Dushyant Kumar Gautam, filed a defamation lawsuit because of social media posts claiming he was a VIP connected to the case. The Delhi High Court actually ordered that content to be taken down, which just goes to show you the intense struggle between public speculation and legal facts.
So, even with a conviction and 3 life sentences, you'd think the case would be closed, right? But the conversation around it is far from over. Let's dig into why that is.
And that's the big question, isn't it? The legal part is done, so why are people still talking about, protesting, and debating the Ankita Bhandari case?
Well, because it was never really just about one crime. This case became a symbol for these much larger anxieties that are just simmering in Indian society. Big worries about women's safety, the corrupting influence of political power, and whether you can actually trust the justice system to protect an ordinary person.
At the end of the day, this case really held up a mirror to society. It reflected a huge national concern about the safety of working women. It cranked up the volume on those deep suspicions about whether the powerful can ever really be held accountable. And, in our age of social media, it put a spotlight on the massive challenge of sorting fact from fiction when a story blows up.
From the official point of view, the system worked. Uttarakhand's chief minister told Ankita's family that justice had been pursued, which basically sends the message that the process did what it was supposed to do.
And that's where we're left, with this one final lingering question. The court delivered its verdict. 3 men are in prison for life. But for the society that watched this unfold, that protested and that mourned, has real justice actually been served? That's the question this case forces every single one of us to confront.